Your Excellency, you have been ambassador to Georgia for almost half a year now. How would you summarize your impressions and the achievements so far?
Yes. So I came to Georgia after 20 years, ever since I last visited, which was 1999. So I was so impressed with the progress that you have made in these 20 years. And but on the other hand, the people's warmth and hospitality haven't changed at all. So I saw this huge change, but also the unchanged people, which was very pleasant for me. And the people I'm meeting in the government, in the parliament, and in other areas of your society has been very cooperative with me. So the cooperation with the government has been going very well. It could be symbolized with the signature of two important treaties, investment and avoidance of double taxation treaty, in January, soon after I arrived. And of course we're cooperating in our common fight against COVID-19. So I've been meeting with young people in the universities here in Batumi and also in Tbilisi or in Kutaisi, and very much encouraged with the spirit of young people, very forward-looking. They all speak very good English, and I was encouraged that they will be the next generation leading your beautiful country. So I have a very optimistic view about the future of your Georgian society into the future.
Japan has a large amount of ODA provided for Georgia, and our question is, what concept is it based on? What philosophy is it based on? And what stands behind it? What's the strategy of your ODA?
Yes. So our official development aid is to help the self-help of the recipient countries in the developing world, including Georgia. So we really value the ownership of each recipient countries. And in case of Georgia, I think we see very strong willingness to be sitting in this driver's seat and being an owner of the project. So that makes us quite easy to provide assistance through this official development channel. And we have been providing this ever since you announced your independence in 1991 and into 1992. So in the course of these 30 years, almost 30 years, we're very honored to help your nation building, and in many of the areas, important areas of your economy and society. One example is our assistance for your connectivity. Georgian government has been very keen on strengthening the connectivity role that Georgia is playing, which means the very geostrategically important connection between Asia and Europe. You're located between the two continents, and it is very important for all of us, like we, European Union or the United States and other countries, to support this important role of Georgia. So one example is we have provided the yen loan, a Japanese currency loan, to East-West Highway, the portion that covers the Kutaisi bypass, and we're very honored, proud of being part of this construction. And another area is small grant projects, which is centered around the concept of human security. We put human security as a mainstream of our assistance, because state security which we talk a lot about cannot be successful unless we have security or safety of each individual. And it is important for each individual to be protected and empowered. So this is the human security concept, and we apply that concept to your country. So with the close cooperation with your local governments, your NGOs all over Georgia and the regions, we provide assistance, small scale but very important critical assistance in the area of education, health, environment, agriculture, as well as disaster relief. So these are the main highlights of our assistance to Georgia.
What kind of support has been provided against COVID-19 by Japan for Georgia? Can you please describe in detail?
We've been providing support for Georgia's health system, especially in order to promote universal healthcare concept, as well as primary healthcare concept. And we've been discussing with your health ministry in Tbilisi, especially with the Minister of Health, on how we can support the strengthening these two concepts in Georgia. And so our assistance in the area of COVID response, of course, while doing a more emergency type of assistance, we want to strengthen Georgia's healthcare system in long term. And under these two concepts, the universal health care and primary care. And on that basis, our first assistance, we have done several assistances already, but the first one was last summer when we agreed on the $3 million provision of medical equipments, and it was agreed between Japanese ambassador and foreign minister last summer. And then towards the end of last year, Asian Development Bank decided to use the funding that was established by Japanese government, which is called Asia Pacific Disaster Response Fund. And this was fully financed by Japan, and Japan decided to use the fund through ADB for a new type of disaster, which is COVID, the pandemic. And they agreed to provide through ADB $2.5 million assistance. So we're now in the stage of implementation, and recently we met with the Minister of Health in Tbilisi, and we agreed to go ahead with the procurement and provision of various types of protective equipment, as well as long-term medical equipment for your hospitals.
We hear very frequently about Georgia's geopolitical role as the middle corridor. So what place does Georgia have on Japanese foreign policy agenda?
Well, yes, mid-corridor is one of the priorities for us. We call often this kind of infrastructure connection in different ways. We call them connectivity. And we have been supporting high quality connectivity, sustainable connectivity all over the world. We have done a lot in Asia and Africa, but we are very much interested in doing it in Caucasus. So as I already told and said, that this Georgia's role as connecting the Asia and European continents has to be strengthened, and we have done through our assistance through East-West Highway, but also we're interested in doing in other infrastructure projects, as well as other connectivity areas like energy, because you produce a huge amount of hydropower, maybe it could be used for other countries, including European Union, as well as you have this corridor function of transporting oil and gas from Azerbaijan or Central Asia through Georgia to European Union. And we also participate in the BTC pipeline. Our Japanese companies have a small but important stake in this oil connection, and we look forward for further cooperation. This is also because Japanese companies very much looking to a faster connection with Europe. They currently use sea lane, so it takes a little bit longer time than the middle corridor if middle corridor is effectively used. But because of this lack of high quality infrastructure and the connection in some of the parts of this middle corridor, it's a little bit underused. So that's why we are keen on upgrading in the direction of high quality, sustainable infrastructure concept.
What can government, academia, and wider community of Georgia do to attract more Japanese investors and tourists?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I think awareness is very important. Georgian government has been doing various types of investment seminars in Japan, sometimes online, sometimes face-to-face. I think it's very important attempts to raise awareness of our business. Now we're entering the stage where we can do more targeted, specified meetings, conferences, seminars, so that Japanese businesses' specific interest will be attracted to Georgia. That's one thing. And secondly, as I said, the judicial reform is very important for Georgia's better. It's already very good business climate that you have, but it needs to be improved still. And the key again here is the judicial reform, because any conflict that, if it happens in Georgia, that involves foreign investors, should be resolved in a legal manner on the basis of a fair solution, on the basis of rules. And we still see some of the issues that EU has raised in terms of judicial system in Georgia. So that's very also important for foreign investment. Thirdly, when we start to invest here, of course, we look for employing Georgian high-skilled labor. And we see the potential for that kind of employment, but also we see the room for upgrading the qualification of Georgian labor force, especially upgrading the expertise of many of the potentially high quality labor you have. So those are 3 or 4 elements that I personally think is important for the investment. And in addition to this, specifically for tourism, I think direct flight is the key. And some of your airlines are quite interested in doing this, but it's like chicken and egg. If you don't have enough tourists, then the flight cannot be beneficial, profitable. So here again, the awareness raising attempt is very important. And I would suggest to Georgian tourism agency to have a seminar for not just only Japanese business, but also for tour operators in Japan. We have several major tour operators that are interested in Caucasus. So if we bring them together and provide the information that will appeal to Japanese tourists, the operators will quite naturally organize that into an effective tour that could attract numbers of Japanese tourists. I think we need to go step by step. So the first direct flights should be on the basis of charter. So then after you accumulate your experience in direct charter flights, then we can start discussing more regular direct flights. And also, I think the second thing you need is to attract Japanese tourists, as I said. In order to do so, maybe better not just have a Japan-Georgia direct flight, but also to allow Japanese tourists to first stop in Georgia, then continue their tour to other parts of the world, like Europe or Turkey, and provide a relatively competitive fare if I'm a businessman owning an airline in Georgia. That would be my advice.
Japan and Georgia share one important similarity, that is illegal occupation by Russia of our lands, Northern Islands in Japan and Abkhazia, South Ossetia in Georgia. How can we cooperate on the international arena to achieve the progress in this regard?
Mm-hmm. Well, our basic position is, of course, we support Georgia's territorial integrity within the internationally recognized borders. And of course, we hope, we want this conflict to be resolved in a peaceful manner. That's our basic position. And the reason why we have this basic position is that we, of course, care for the rule-based order, and especially international law. We promote this idea, especially in our regions surrounding our countries and in Indo-Pacific region, but also it's applicable to Caucasus and in Georgia specifically. One of the key concepts is, of course, territorial integrity. That is a very basic foundation of international law that should cover all over the world. And another thing that is important for us is, of course, the human rights. And we are very much concerned about the human rights violation in the areas surrounding, of course, within Tskhinval or Abkhazia, but also areas surrounding these areas controlled by Georgia currently. So what should be done? We really support Georgia's efforts to adopt United Nations General Assembly resolutions. So we co-sponsored some of those attempts recently. And of course, every time an incident happens, like a recent detention of Georgian citizen by Tskhinval and sentencing of that person, we announced our concerns through our embassy channel publicly. Although we're not part of Geneva discussions, we support this kind of Georgia's efforts to raise awareness and gain support from international community. You mentioned about our northern territories currently under Russian control. They occupied these 4 islands in August and September 1945, and ever since we've been negotiating with the Soviet Union and Russia almost nearly 70 years, negotiating on the sovereignty over these 4 islands. And there were 17,000 Japanese people living there who were forced to evacuate from these their homelands, these 4 islands. So it is very important for us to continue our negotiations. Unfortunately, there's no breakthrough so far. Unlike the Georgians' occupied territories, we don't raise this issue in the United Nations, but of course this is this has a connotation to the territorial integrity and the importance of international law, like your 2 occupied territories. So they are related, but we negotiate bilaterally in order to achieve the breakthrough, which we hope will happen in the nearest future.
What did the Tochinōshin effect meant for Georgia-Japanese relations?
Yes, it meant huge. Tochinōshin is very popular in Japan. Of course, sumo is our national sport and one of the 2 or 3 most popular sport in Japan. And Tochinōshin is probably the most famous Georgian in Japan. He is a kind of a Georgian ambassador in Japan in sport. And thanks to his popularity, now people in Japan know more about Georgia, your country, and they want to understand more about Georgian culture. So his fame had a great positive impact on Japanese people. For one, just quote one example is that last year, one of the Japanese restaurant chains provided different kind of national food from different countries, including chikumelli from Georgia. And after these events, they asked the clients to vote which dish did you like most from each of these countries. And actually Georgia got the first place. And the restaurant chain decided to offer chikumelli from January this year as part of their regular menu. And my guess is that Tochinoshi had good impact on this selection. And another impact is the popularity of sumo as a sport in Georgia. And I know that people in Georgia watch sumo through internet or television, and this is inspiring some of your young people to start playing sumo in Georgia. And if you remember the predecessor of Tochinoshin, his sumo name is Kokkai, meaning Black Sea. He was the first Georgian to be playing in Japanese sumo tournament. And he came, after his retirement, came back to Georgia, and he has organized Georgia's Sumo Federation. And he is bringing all these talented sumo wrestlers in Georgia together to train. So I visited training camp, which was held in Zugudidi in May. And I was so impressed with these young talented people. And Mr. Kokkai would like to send next generation of sumo players after Tochinoshin to Japan. So I want to help him, although it's not Olympian sport, so that it's not getting maybe not high enough attention in Georgia supporting this sport, but I would like to help him achieve his project.
Japan has a huge cultural impact on our young people and teenagers, and because they are so fond of anime, this is the reason why many of them start to learn Japanese language. What advice can you give those young people who are interested in Japan and its culture, how they can bring themselves closer to Japan and learn about it?
Yes. We, as Japanese government, Embassy of Japan, we are promoting both traditional and contemporary cultures of Japan in Georgia. And in addition to traditional culture, we are very glad that the contemporary culture like anime is quite popular in your country. There are different kinds of genres in anime, but many of them like reading a book or literature makes you think very deeply about people's lives or the surrounding world. So it's almost like not just only entertaining, but also a serious way of learning how you should be living in this changing world. So as a result, we noticed that many Georgian young people through anime take interest in learning Japanese culture, including Japanese language, or even start thinking of going to Japan to study in Japan. So I would give advice to those people to turn to our website where we provide some information about studying in Japan and through our Ministry of Education channel, get the scholarship in our universities. And also those who are interested in learning Japanese language, they can look for internet resources. You can, of course, go to universities where in Georgia there are a couple of, still very few, but providing Japanese language courses. But also there are internet resources they can use. So if you have any questions on these and others, please turn to our embassy. We can provide advice to you. And lastly, I can say that going back to anime, we not just show you our achievements in anime culture, but also we invite Georgians to participate in animation production. And even some of the young people in Georgia have successfully produced very interesting animation works. So this month we're going to give award from our Japanese foreign minister to a young Georgian woman who works at the Tbilisi's state hand shadow theater. She is an actress of hand shadow theater who has made a very good animation film, and she was awarded this high accolade in Japan. So we will be providing this award very soon.
Next year in August, there will be 30 years since Georgia-Japanese diplomatic relations were established. So how can you assess those past 3 decades, and are any celebrations being planned?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that question. Yes, we will be celebrating next year 30th anniversary of establishment of our diplomatic relations. This will be a very important year for both of our countries because we will be reflecting upon these 30 years ever since your independence and ever since we established these very important relationships. I think, as I said in the beginning of this interview, you have covered the huge progress over the course of 30 years. This achievement has been in your economic development, your democratization, welfare of your people in all areas of your country. Of course, you faced difficult challenges, including the war with Russia, but I think your recent successful efforts are making a very positive impact on the people. So I think, and also we are very proud of part of this, supporting your independence from the very beginning and supporting your territorial integrity during the very hard years of your development. And lastly, of course, we have been part of supporting your efforts in the nation building through our official development aid. So these 30 years, I would say, we were together all the time with you, and we're very proud that we are part of your, these development efforts over the course of 30 years. So we should be together celebrating these achievements. And as I said, we should reflect on the progress you made and the challenges you're still facing. So we're hoping that this next year will be kind of stepping stone towards next 30 years or next 20 years when we'll be celebrating 50-year, 60-year anniversary. This will be the next new stage of our relationship. And as I said, and as you asked me, we will be organizing many more cultural events, other important events, exchange of people throughout all year, so that we can celebrate together and symbolize our, support and mutual relations in the 30 years of ceremony or anniversary.